Hey, it's Rich, Tennessee Homestead. How the heck are you today? Okay, sorry I've been kind of missing in action, but actually I've been up to my eyeballs in investigating. It really looks like a lot of shenanigans going on out there in this election. Not much of a surprise. Matter of fact, what I am surprised with is that the news media, you'll see a lot of those video shots of where I talked about the post office and so forth. Are now reappearing back out on the internet through regular news media, talking about the Postal Service. There has been so much going on with this whole mess that it looks like enough shenanigans got pulled, and now that they're having to make some of these records public, like in Pennsylvania and so forth, they are beginning to show where, like, Donald Trump took a huge hit in votes, backed up by Biden getting a huge hit in votes. You know, one down, one up. Things of this nature that they say in a regular election just doesn't happen. The fact that the transparency was not there. Poll watchers were ran out of these states. Okay? To the point that Pennsylvania Supreme Court, now Pennsylvania Supreme Court had ordered that these poll watchers be allowed in. No, excuse me, it was Michigan's, I think. I'm getting confused. And then you had a sheriff ban the poll watchers, even though the Supreme Court had ordered them to have access. If that doesn't stink, okay, something's not right there. When did a sheriff become more powerful than the Supreme Court of a state? I think constitutionally you'll find that doesn't happen. Okay, so there be some questions to be answered. Detroit, they've got a big problem with the way it was handled in Detroit. Well, in 2012 election, they threw out two of the major precincts in Detroit. The governor of the state did, because there had been so much tampering and game playing and tomfoolery with it that they couldn't sort out the good ballots from the bad ballots, and they finally just threw them all in the trash. So a lot of people in Detroit lost their vote because of the way it was being handled. Now again, Detroit's back in the headlines. Okay? So yeah, there is, as more of this stuff is starting to come to light, the more and more you're beginning to see that, yeah, Trump's got some solid legs to stand on here. This just isn't him pulling it out of his tush. Now this video may go a little long, but there's a lot to cover here. One of the humorous things I ran across, and I'm still trying to find out if it's fact or fiction, but I was actually watching a podcast of Charlie Kirk's, because Brian Tatum was on with him, and so I'm watching this podcast, and somehow it got onto the age of the presidents and so forth. So Charlie Kirk had a Siri's application on his phone, and he calls it and asks, "How old is the President of the United States?" Sirius gave him an immediate answer of exactly how old Kamala Harris was. So he asked again. In about 6 different times, it gave the exact same answer. And then a little longer in the program, you can see in the comments where people were trying it, and they said now all of a sudden it's talking about Donald Trump. Gee. And even Brian Tatum asked, "Charlie, is this some kind of a joke?" And he's going, "No, this is my Siri's app." Let me tell you first off, Joe Biden will not be president of this country any longer than a snowball in hell. That's the reason that the Democrats are looking at the 25th Amendment, and they are going to walk in there pretty much after they, settle in and say Joe Biden has come down with extreme dementia, like you can't tell that already. I mean, I was around when Reagan in his last years was beginning to show signs of dementia, And he wasn't half as far gone as Joe Biden. All right? And the Democrats was trying to throw him out of office for dementia. Yeah. Now they run guys like that for president. Yeah, Sirius was putting it out as Ms. Harris being the president of the United States. And, you know, there's been too many little Freudian slips out of the Democrats along those lines. The humor I find in it is now you don't need a Trump sign in your front yard to get BLM and the Antifa kids up in your face. There's videos out there now where they're going after people that have Biden signs. Yeah. They don't, the riots are not going to disappear, children. They're going to get worse. And Ms. Harris has been stimulating that. She said that the riots are going to continue and blah, 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 blah. It's looking like with the mistakes that were made with the computer glitches, now they're saying in Pennsylvania that the thumb drives that powered up even their voting machines had been stolen out of their warehouse before the election. They're just now getting around telling people that. Well, that means somebody had access to that software? Really? And they think now would be a good time to maybe bring it up when they find out that check those voting machines and find out that the software's been altered? We've already got cases of where votes for Trump are going to Biden. Personally, with all that's riding on this election, I would almost say in these toss-up states that are having all these problems, maybe they should redo their elections. And this time, forget about the mail-in ballots. Go have them issue them absentee ballots for the people that qualify for absentee ballots. Everybody else show up at the polls. Done. Have the software checked before the election starts and rehold that election. The law says that once an election takes place, that it is the responsibilities of the states to continue to count ballots till the count is done. We've had several of these states that seem to be problem children who keep shutting down, sending the polling workers out, going as far as turning off the lights, and then the polling workers kind of swing back by to double check a few hours later, and son of a gun, the place is full of people counting ballots. Even filmed them taking boxes into the voting place. And the state governments are fighting them, fighting them. The videos are there. The one large box that came out of a van they said was full of camera equipment. Well, why didn't they open that box up and show that lawyer that whenever she first questioned him about it? No, afterwards. People going in there with carry-on with this roll-around luggage and stuff of this nature. Listen, people don't pack their lunches in large luggage like that. That's silly. So it's like, how much is this? Now statisticians are beginning to look at how these votes changed, and they're saying, no, you wouldn't see that kind of a fluctuation in that short of a time period unless somebody's cooking the books. Yeah. So there's a lot of problems with this election. And the problem that we're facing here with this is once you make our elections no good, you have virtually done away with the republic. It's dead. Now the question comes into play of, are you going to tread on this republic and try to turn it into something different and not expect a problem out of it? The Democrats are kind of hoping, matter of fact, I'm not even going to use the term Democrat, so if you're listening to me and you hear me say the word communist, know who I'm referencing, because that's what they are. Okay, these people are devout, self-admitted, other than Joe Biden, he don't know what he is. He thinks he might be a Martian, he's not sure. And then I'm seeing out here on Twitter a bunch of Democrats going, man, I didn't know he was behind all that. We wouldn't have voted for him. Yeah, well, that's what being a dumb butt does for you. Mainstream media. You're gonna have to add Fox News onto that now. They had Democrats calling their election results. Fox News is no longer a conservative voice. Be advised. Okay? You better find other news sources. We need to quit even viewing things like CNN, MSNBC, all that. Just stop watching them. Because every time you tune in to hear what they have to say, you are giving them viewership for revenue. We don't want to give them any more revenue. If the election totals are correct and there was 70 some odd million conservatives, we need to take that out of their pools. Okay? We need to start thinking along the lines of boycotting these swing states who have allowed these hijinks to take place in their states and are not, the people of those states should be up in arms. So much nonsense is going on here with this election. It is amazing. I'm a fairly old dude, folks, and I've been in politics, involved, paying close attention to politics since I was a very young man. I have never seen anything like this. Even the Gore-Bush thing was nothing like this. Nothing like this. Okay, this is a blatant attempt to steal this election, period. That's all it is. Kind of said that going in when they started talking about this bulk mailing and so forth. Now, here's the amazing thing. In California, although what does it matter in California? That place always goes blue. But in their primaries, they had a great deal of rejected ballots. A great deal of rejected ballots. Okay? But none in the general election. None. Isn't that great? Somehow between the primaries and the general election, they absolutely cleaned up their mail-in stuff 150%. Next step in this game. Joe Biden and Kamala is going to try to pack, and hopefully the Senate can stop them. They're going to try to pack the Supreme Court. If they manage to do that, this country's done. You're done. Okay? You are done. Now these little socialists running around out there thinking that this communist regime that's going to come into play is going to be their little socialist dream come true. And they all like to use Sweden and stuff as examples. I had spent the time to watch a long documentary, and I'll provide you a link down here to it, on the country of Sweden. And they're getting tired of being called a socialist country because they're not really a socialist country. They have some socialist programs, but they are not a socialist country at all, period. They're a capitalist country that has some socialist benefits to their people. But here's the thing that most poor people here in this country who think socialism would be a real good thing for them. The average medium and low income worker in Sweden, they pay about 60% in taxes of their income. 60%. Okay? For their perks. Yeah, they got like Social Security, which that's even fluctuates. If the government's running short of money, they just take away out of your monthly check. Now that'll allow you some long-term planning, wouldn't it? Yeah. But 60% is on average for the average working person in Sweden. Now everybody pays the same, 60%. Of course, businessmen have other loopholes they get to jump through, but still. So there's no such thing as the true socialist countries like these guys are talking about. It is more along the lines of a Cuba or Venezuela. Not a good idea. That's why they got their butts handed to them in Florida, is because a lot of Venezuelans relocated to Florida. And a lot of Cubans live in Florida. And you're not going to play that game with them. They know what it is. They live through it. All we hear about today is democracy, democracy, democracy. We are not a democracy. Okay? They're trying to make us one. We're the mob rules, but we're not a democracy. That's not what the Founding Fathers designed here in this country. Now, this crony capitalism that the government has put in place needs to go. A lot of the things that Sweden are doing, that everybody, all the socialists want to say, oh, it's a great the way they do things, is really what this country was like by what our founding fathers designed. It's a capitalist country, and everybody gets to make money, and their difference was, instead of the government taking their money to provide you with benefits, the government lets you keep your money. We didn't have an income tax. Okay? And we shouldn't have one now. We shouldn't. Our government spends way too much money. Let them get their money from tariffs, both being exported and imported, and get out of our back pockets. That's going to require them to get the budget under control. But if we don't get this budget under control soon, you're not going to get it under control, and we're all going to disappear. We're going to go down the tubes. We need to wake up to what's going on out here, folks. Time for talking is about at an end. It is time for the people of this country to stand back up and say that's enough. I really didn't think I'd see this in my lifetime, but in reviewing this whole mess, there is no redeeming this mess. Okay? Our government needs to be put back inside the confines of the United States Constitution and told you will not step out of it. If you step out of it, you violated your oath of office and will remove you from office. Not by vote, for violation of your oath of office. And that goes from the president right on down to the lowest little son of a gun we got serving. We need to clean the swamp. According to the United States Constitution, the only policing powers that the federal government has as far as law enforcement, the only crimes it handles, is high crimes and misdemeanors. Federal. Okay? We have developed this FBI that is into everything. Don't need to be there. Don't need to be there. FBI needs a house cleaner. Cut it back and say you are limited to investigating things such as espionage, treason, so forth. You need to get out of the law enforcement business. DEA, you have states out here saying marijuana and so forth is legal. Somebody needs to point me to something in the United States Constitution that tells the federal government that drugs, they can monitor drugs. Where is it in the Constitution? See, because if it's not actually written in that Constitution as the power of the federal government, that automatically is reverted back to the states and the people of that state. So if a state says, well, we don't care about drugs, or we want pot, but we won't allow meth and heroin, the states are allowed to do that. The federal government is not. Never has, never will. It is not in the Constitution. Whoops. That's the reason to outlaw alcohol. To outlaw alcohol, remember, they had to change the Constitution to give them that authority, now didn't they? Son of a gun. You see any amendment in there for drug enforcement? See, because by then our government had moved down the road to where they just don't pay much attention to the Constitution. Anything not in the Constitution, that power is reserved for the state and the people in that state, not the federal government. All powers given to the federal government of the United States of America is given to it in writing in the U.S. Constitution. Period. Big exclamation mark. End of story. How many of you here can tell me that our government is actually doing that? I can assure you that if you know anything about how your government is behaving and how it is acting, you will find it is not there. They write laws and write more laws. I think the last time I checked, it was a few thousand every month. Those laws are not being compared to the U.S. Constitution, see, because every American citizen doesn't have the money to file constitutional lawsuits about every little thing. and the way our court system has become, if it's not doing you in particular damage, then, there's not a lot you can even make a claim in court. And now you've got such a bureaucracy of courts, it's ridiculous. It's very simple. The United States Constitution is the supreme law of this land. Period. Exclamation point. End of story. Supreme law of the land. It tells the federal government, if it is not written in this Constitution as a power to the federal government, your power isn't there then. It immediately reverts back to the states. Immediately reverts back to the states. See, they've handled all these questions. Who's in charge of drugs? The states. Because there's no mention of drugs in the Constitution. So that power needs to go back to the states. Here again, look at prohibition. When the federal government stepped up to outlaw alcohol and institute prohibition, what did they have to do to get the power to do that? See, that was back when people still understood what their constitutional rights were. Needed to amend the Constitution. Amendment was put forth, it was ratified by the states, and made law. Now the government could enforce it. You want to show me that amendment for drugs? For pot? I'm not a big one on drugs. Don't get me wrong. I think it's pretty stupid that people rely on that sort of stuff to get through their day. Okay, meth and heroin and stuff like that is absolutely wrong. Pot, I haven't seen any research that says it's going to kill you. But, if states want it, let them do it. But the fact of the matter is, it's not a government issue. We do not need a DEA out here running around. We need our borders enforced. Okay, you want to get the Democrats on board for border enforcement? Tell them, listen, it isn't to stop illegals. It's to make sure no drugs are shipped across the border illegally. We're protecting your pot business. Okay, Californians jump all over that one. You bet. If it's not written in the Constitution, it is not a power given to our federal government. Our founding fathers wanted an extremely, extremely limited government. And by us sitting back, we have allowed this government to get totally out of control. We as a people need to stand up now and say, no, this is more than an election. This is where you folks have gotten out of control, and it's time for you to step back and step down. The Constitution is the supreme law of the land. You guys don't need to be writing more laws. You need to be erasing laws. If it does not give you that authority in the United States Constitution, okay? If that is not a power given to the federal government in the U.S. Constitution, you cannot give that power to yourself. Not without a constitutional amendment. So it's time to step down. And any laws that give you power that's not in that Constitution are null and void. Might as well rip them out of the books. And if you've got people in prison because of it, turn them loose. Because they were wrongfully prosecuted. Now there's the simple facts, folks. You want to be like Sweden socialists? Go back to your founding documents. You will find that we had a government much like Sweden's, but with no taxation. See, I wasn't responsible for your medical. You were. Okay? I wasn't responsible for your retirement. You were. Self-responsibility. You're in charge of your own destiny. Okay? To minorities who sit back and say, oh, my ancestors were Native American. All right? And let me tell you something. Your ancestors were doing better in this country way back then, shortly after slavery, than you're doing today. Why is that? Why is that? Your ancestors saw this as being a land of opportunity for them. And they took advantage of it. Became entrepreneurs, scholars, philosophers. And a lot of minorities today still do that. Okay? But let me explain something to you. I don't judge anybody by the color of their skin. And these groups out here running around on the streets now who are screaming systemic racism and this and that and the other. Okay, that's a government issue. Why are you out here burning businesses? It's a government issue. Go to Washington, D.C. Take it up with them. Okay? Most Americans do not have any way to mass discriminate against anybody. Think about that for a minute. And wouldn't even if they did. Why would we want to hold you down? Think about that. Are you wanting to hold other people down? And you're painting us with that brush? I think you'll find out that most people in this country want everybody to do well. Problem is we've got a federal government with their boot on our throat, and it's time for America to stand up and take a boot off. But it's time to get the boot off our throats. This election was a violation of everything that America stood for. Okay, when the law says you should have poll watchers in there so that you've got transparency in that election, and they're thrown out, they're lied to, board up the windows to where they can't even stand 100 foot away and peek through the glass at you, something's wrong there. It's time to wake up, America. This is Rick, Tennessee Homestead. Said all I've said. I'll probably have the Secret Service at my door. But it's time to bring it to a close. We have a tyrannical government. And it's about to get worse. Even down to one last little thing here, and I'll let this go. It was just announced by the New York Post they've got a vaccine that is 90% effective against COVID. 90%. They're putting it in production. There will be a vaccine available for this virus before the end of the year. Just like your president promised you. But now he's a lying sack of crap, isn't he? That's what the Democrats tell you. And now you've got these same Democrats, Biden, Cuomo, and clowns like this, who are now wanting to try to stop that going into production and stop it from being released to you until after Biden takes office. Why? We took over the virus and look, we immediately came up with a vaccine. Lying pieces of crap, every one of them. This is Red, Tennessee Homestead. Love you guys, appreciate you. Talk to you soon.